let's jump right into the S3 control surface, and I'm going to give you a little tour of the navigation of the surface itself. As you're looking at it, I'm sure you're saying to yourself, wow, that doesn't look anything like Venue that I know, have come to know. But I think once you start to dig in on it and I start to show you around a little bit, you're going to be really surprised at how similar it is to previous Venue control surfaces. It's just a much, much more compact version of it. As you can see here, 16 faders, okay? So I'll tell you what, let's jump up, let's go to channel control, which is this top 8 encoders, okay? For you guys that operate SC48, probably no thing on the console is going to be more similar than this, where it operates exactly like channel control on SC48. So if you look up here, we have 4 navigation buttons. We have a back that will take us to a top layer, an in button, and then 2 page buttons. And then as you look across the row, you'll see user, input, EQ, comp limit, expand gate, aux 1 through 8, 9 through 16, right? So it's exactly like we know it in channel control. And to operate it, or to pick up a given section of the channel control that we want to operate, we just simply press on the encoder. So let's just go where we would normally gravitate to in an input. Let's operate an equalizer, all right? So I'm going to select channel 1, and then I'm going to press on EQ. Now you'll notice that the LEDs above the channel control section all turn green. And then in addition, the software turns green to highlight where we're actually operating, right? So just as in channel control, you'll see that we have control over all 8 parameters, but the Q for the frequency select is 1 layer down. And the way we navigate to that is with in buttons and select buttons. So in this situation, for this kind of processor, in is actually going to put the filter in and out, and then select is going to let us choose the frequency or the Q or the bandwidth of the filter, right? So I'll just do some boosting here, and obviously we're in Q mode now, and now I'm going to take us out of Q and frequency select. So, with that layered Q, I think actually after operating channel control for some time, I actually get faster equalizing on this than I do with the 3-knob paradigm that we saw in the earlier Venue consoles, all right? Let's maybe take a look at another parameter. So we're going to hit the back button. That's going to take us back to the top layer, or the top level. And let's go get maybe compressor, okay? So now we've pushed on the compressor encoder, and when you see we have all the compressor parameters up here, including high-pass filter and low-pass filter for the key input, right? We have in and out, the main in and out for the compressor. We have threshold control. All of the controls are sitting here right on those 8 knobs, all right? So it's channel control. Even though it looks very different, operates almost exactly the same. Okay, the next place we're going to move to is the encoder row, the console-wide encoder row. So if we start to move our way down left on the left-hand side of the control surface, we stop at these 4 buttons right here. And just to read them off to you in case you can't see them there, it's a back button, 2 page buttons, 1 left and 1 right, and then of course our source button. If you guys remember the source button from the previous consoles, if I press that, I can now see the source of the inputs that are before me. So as you can see here, it's stage rack 1, A1, A2, A3, right on down the line. As we come out of source, we go back to our normal channel names. As we move on down, this will be very familiar to you compared to previous Venue consoles. As you can see here, we have input gain as a selection for the encoder choice, or we can make it high-pass filter. Now all of the knobs are high-pass filters on the console. Or we can make it compressor thresholds, where we can, now all of the encoders are compressor thresholds, pan, etc. We can even move down to aux. Now this is where we're going to break a little bit from previous navigation. In the previous consoles, we always had multiple buttons to choose auxes, etc. But we're going to start teaching you kind of a new way to navigate auxes here, and I've actually found this to be really, really fast. It's exactly the same amount of button pushes as we had previously, but we're able to accomplish it with 1 aux button. So if you notice, I have auxiliary chosen for the encoder row. What you'll notice is that you see all of the aux choices across the encoder rows. All right, so I see aux 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is actually navigation that we're going to do now. So I select aux, and then I select the auxiliary that I want to look at console-wide. So I'm going to select AUX 8, and now notice across the entire encoder row is the aux levels for each of the inputs in AUX 8. All right? If we want to go back, we go back to AUX, and now we select AUX 11. Now we're looking at AUX 11 console-wide. All right, let's take a look at bank selection. You know, that's always been a centerpiece of the Venue consoles, is easy navigation through banks. Nothing has changed there really, except for the way that we get between inputs and output banking here. As you note, it's 16 faders, right? But that can be inputs or outputs. So if we stay over here on the left-hand side of the console, you'll notice we have a number of bank selections: A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, so if I select bank A, that represents inputs 1 through 16. If I go to bank B, that's going to represent 17 through 24 and right on down the line until we get to E. Once I get to E, now I'm selecting output banks. As you can see here, I have a number of auxiliary masters selected across the console, 1 through 16. If I go to F, now that represents subgroups and VCAs. Okay, so input banking, output banking, all on one set of 16 faders. All right? So in terms of assignment, we can also do that in this area here. If you'll notice the multi-assign button, that operates exactly as we do it on Venue today. If I were to go to subgroups, let's say, I'm going to select subgroup 1 and let's assign some inputs to it. I go to bank F, select group 1, press multi-assign, go back to the input bank and start selecting inputs that I want in that group, and then just simply press OK. Now, if I go to that group, all of those inputs are assigned to that group. So just that simple, we can do assignments. You know, with regard to banking, we're going to offer you something on S3 that's not available on the previous Venue surfaces. This is something that we've brought in from the Euphonics workflows and even from the Icon workflows, and that is a set of nudge buttons. So I'm going to move you all the way over to the right side of the control surface up to a little 4-button cluster up here in the right. And as you'll notice, there's 2 buttons at the top that say nudge and ones right below it that say bank. What this is going to allow us to do is move the console left or right, essentially 1 channel or 1 bank at a time. So if you look in the OLED displays, you can see that I have channels 1 through 16, input channels 1 through 16 shown, and I'm just going to nudge that left or right. So if I click on the right nudge, you'll notice that channels 2 through 17 appear now. One more nudge and we're now 3 through 18. We're just moving down 1 channel at a time. Now, if we go to bank, we can move 1 bank at a time, and as soon as I press that bank button, we go back to our static banking. So right now you're looking at 33 through 48. Now we're looking at 17 through 32, 1 through 16. We can move just through the banks 1 step at a time, essentially. Okay? So it's a really handy feature. It's going to be really imperative and important that you learn how to use it, given that you have 16 faders that are covering both inputs and outputs. Okay? So it's going to be important for you to really understand where you are in terms of strips, whether you're on an input or an output strip, because they're going to look very similar in terms of their processing. With that additional compressor and equalization available to each output now, you know, the strips are going to look similar, but they're going to operate exactly the same. And your key is going to be, what bank are you on? Are you on an input bank or an output bank? That's always going to be your indicator of where you're at. Okay, let's take a look at just some of the controls that are common to all of the input strips and the output strips for that matter now. As we talked about earlier in the software discussion, in the latest Venue software, you notice that we have processing for outputs now that is very similar to the processing for the inputs. We have equalization, dynamics control, etc. So let's take a look at input strips and see what controls are common. For a given input strip, obviously you have a fader. We're going to have some input metering or output metering depending on what bank you're on. You're going to have a select button to be able to select that input or output. You're going to have a mute button and a solo button for each input or output. As you move above it, if the parameters apply to an input, say like gain or high-pass filter, etc., they will show up there. If we're in an output, that's obviously going to be master controls. But the thing to really latch onto here is that whether you're on an input or an output now, you're going to have channel control available for inputs and outputs, meaning you're going to have equalization, you're going to have dynamics control on both inputs and outputs. So it's going to be important for you to understand whether you're on input banks or output banks, and the lighting on the bank controls is going to be your indicator. So there are a number of controls on the S3 surface that are either identical or very similar to what we've had in Venue in the past. We'll start with the global modifiers. It's down in the lower left-hand corner of the control surface. So as you can see here, we have 4 controls, and we followed the same paradigm as in the previous consoles: multi-select and shift, default and alt, fine and control, and then also the command button. That's an addition now where we have a duplicate of the command key on a QWERTY keyboard. Next, let's move up to the right-hand side of the console, and we'll take a look at view mode and how it operates on S3. So for view mode, in the past, what you've seen on Venue consoles is dedicated buttons to navigate the software. We've had dedicated buttons per tab, for top-level tab, to be able to let you navigate. Given the compact nature of S3, it's kind of impractical to have that many buttons available for it. So we've kind of come up with a really good, clever hybrid of it. So let's take a look at the buttons that are available here. You'll notice that in this area here, this is our view mode, and we have 2 buttons, one labeled View 1 and one labeled View 2. These are user definable. We can actually go into the software and define what views we want to go to immediately there, so we can very quickly navigate. If we go into the software to the interaction page or tab of the options, down here in the lower right is where we choose the selection for those switches. So right now we have inputs chosen and then plugins chosen for view 2. So going back to the surface now, if I press view 1, it takes me immediately to the inputs page. View 2 takes me immediately to the plugins page. If I want to continue on navigating outside of those pages, I use the buttons that are directly below it. There's an up and down button and an up button and a down button. The up button will take us to the top level tabs, meaning inputs, outputs, filing, snapshots, etc. And the way we navigate it is with the left-right arrows. We just push our way backwards and forwards along the top level. If we get to a tab that has sub-tabs, much like options, we navigate down one by pressing the down, and now we're left-right again, and we're navigating all of the different tabs in the sub area. All right, so you can get around very quickly on this. You'll get used to it and in a very quick amount of time and be able to do it without even looking at the surface before too long. On previous Venue systems, we've always given you a number of dedicated mute groups and a dedicated function switches to be able to program into certain functionality for the console. And we kind of just got to the point where we felt like, really what we probably should just give everybody is 16 function switches and just let them program anything they want them to be. And because it's so easy to do in the Venue software, it didn't seem right or didn't seem efficient to have dedicated switches for the things like mute groups. So down here on the right-hand side of the console, you'll see an array of switches, an array of 10 switches actually, and 8 of them are function switches, and there's 2 layers of it. So essentially you have 16 function switches to be able to program in any combination of mute groups and events that you want to operate for the S3. In addition, you have a button here that allows you to get immediately to the events page. It looks like a big eyeball. So if we press that, we'll go immediately to the events page, and we can start programming in whatever functionality we want for these function switches. And again, we have 1 through 8, and then we have a second bank of it, 9 through 16. All right, so let's go back to 1 through 8 for a second, and we can take a look at one of the switches that we have programmed, because I want to bring your attention to another nice new feature in Venue software here that we did not have previously, and that is for tap tempo. As you can see here, we've taken function switch 4 and made it our tap tempo. If we tap tempo, we see it in the software screen, but also notice that we have the ability to light the function switch at the tempo that is actually being tapped in, or that we're actually operating for the given snapshot or place we are in the song. So if I rapid tap, you'll notice that the tap goes or the light flashes at the actual tap tempo now. So that's something that's been requested for a long time in Venue software, and we now have it available for us. In addition, you're going to be able to program in things on these function switches like obviously mute groups if you want to do it. You'll be able to program in snapshot recall, snapshot next, things like that to be able to navigate snapshots right here. So you can really, in a very short amount of time, make this a really action-packed, power-packed section. This is going to end up being a very important section to you as you're putting your show files together. Another new feature on S3 that we've added is a touch strip. If you move down to the lower right-hand corner of the control surface, you'll see it. And you'll notice that it's kind of broken up into 4 zones. You could have it be where all 4 zones are the same, or you can break it up and have it do different functionality. So if we go back to the events page and we take a look, we can add that as a new trigger device. So if we drop down the menu, you'll see touch strip, zone 1, zone 2, and then we can add functionality to it. Maybe it is Pro Tools transport, maybe it's any number of things that you can put onto that. Obviously, all of these things could be put on function switches as well, but it allows you to build some transport control or any kind of touch control into this little touch strip as well. Just another nice little area to allow you to do some more event programming. As we move right of that, I just want to take a quick note of these 2 switches right here. These have to do with our headphone monitoring situation. We have the ability to clear solos, so any channels that we have soloed up, we could clear out. And we also have the ability to take our left-right mix directly to monitors. Now, I know at some point someone's going to ask the question, well, where is the master fader? Well, that's coming up next. We've actually removed the master fader from this fader set down here and put it up in another section of the console called Global Control. This is where we get things like insert mode. We can actually double up on output control. This is actually really similar to what we released initially on D-Show, where we could have output faders up and also control other outputs on a set of knobs. That paradigm will be in play here on S3 as well, where you could have inputs on the faders, but still be in control of outputs up here on a knob set. All right, so let's take a look at this. Up in this area here, you'll have navigation again. You'll have page forwards and backwards, a back button that will take you to a top level. And while we're here, might as well make note of the idea that this is the config button, okay? This is your being able to go in and out of show mode into config mode. You don't need to be in config mode to do this, so we'll go back to show mode. All right, so let's take a look at the sets that are available here to us. We have insert mode, and then we have aux groups, matrices, VCAs, monitor, which is monitor levels for like near field monitors, and then mains. This is actually our left-right master right now, left-right mono master, because it doesn't show up in the 16 fader set. All right, so let's start with insert mode. That's always a great place to start. And again, this is very analogous to the 8 encoders that are above our output faders in both Profile and SC48 and D-Show. Okay, so the way we get to it is to simply press the encoder to get us to the mode that we want. So I'm going to press on insert mode, and we're going to go to an input that has a plug-in on it. And you'll notice immediately that the parameter sets jump up for that plug-in. So this is the channel strip plug-in that we're going to be using with the console. And as you can see, I got low gain control, I got low frequency select, etc. All of the parameters are available to us there. Same thing would apply for effects returns, etc. Let me go to an effects return here. That's actually here. And here we have a reverb set up on effects return. And notice once I have it selected, all of its parameters are now available to the encoder set up here in global control. All right. Okay. Way to get back out of it is to press the back button. That takes us up one level, and now we're back to our normal sets of insert mode, groups, matrices, etc. So let's pick another one that we might want to control. Let me choose matrices, and you'll get the idea of what this is. This is basically a duplicate set of knobs that would control the output master faders, right? So we could be in inputs. Now we're in input faders, but we're still controlling the aux master here, all right? So I'm going to go back one more time. Let's do a couple more just to make sure you have it. Let's choose matrices. That's a good one to do from here. So I'm going to choose matrices, and then I'm going to select matrix 1, and let's get to the outputs page here. And notice now, as I've selected matrix 1, if I press down on the encoder, what it does is give me all of the sources for that matrix here now. So I can put something in circuit, and now I can turn up. This is actually subgroups to a matrix. I'm actually adding all of these different subgroups to the matrix now, right from the encoder row here.